Well, welcome back to Washington. Now, there is indeed going to be a second impeachment procedure against Donald Trump starting tomorrow morning when the Articles of Impeachment are filed against him for allegedly inciting violence on Capitol Hill on Wednesday. That is a historic first, but few people here believe that it'll actually lead to a conviction in the Senate. However, there's an interesting line from the White House today that actually he quite likes the idea of the impeachment process, which is not going to lead anywhere because it keeps him relevant. And the one thing that Donald Trump really hates is oblivion, being ignored. That's certainly not going to happen anytime soon. But in the political establishment here in the city, he is very much now a pariah. Official Washington may have put its flags at half-mast, but at the White House there is no hint of contrition about the defiling of Congress. The resident has been silenced on Twitter, a lonely outcast in his own fiefdom. In the final days of the Trump presidency, the White House feels and looks more like a bunker, barely recognizable behind the barricades of protest and added security. While all around it, curfew and COVID have turned the streets into an apocalyptic movie set. Here we found Smokey Sims, all hedgehog spikes, playing his speaking part in the season finale of Trump's reality TV show From Hell. Smokey, what should happen to President Trump in the last 10 days that he remains in office?
Trump should be locked up. He should be locked up, put in jail, because what he did is unjustifiable.
That's not an option, for now anyway. But for the second time in 12 months, articles of impeachment have been drawn up against President Trump. These papers are meant to force him to resign. And that is what a growing number of Republican senators are now also saying publicly.
I think at this point, with just a few days left, it's the best path forward, the best way to get this person in the rearview mirror for us. That could happen immediately. I'm not optimistic it will, but I do think that would be the best way forward.
Now downgraded to this person. Here was the president a year ago after the first impeachment.
Did nothing wrong. Did nothing wrong. But this is what the end result is.
Wild applause also from Republican senators who at that stage still saw Trump as their best ticket to retaining power. One Republican who never fell for Trump is the former governor of California and America's most famous Austrian, who unsheathed his rhetoric today.
I grew up in Austria. I'm very aware of Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass. It was a night of rampage against the Jews carried out in 1938 by the Nazi equivalent of the Proud Boys. Wednesday was the day of broken glass right here in the United States. The broken glass was in the windows of the United States Capitol.
Some comparison, but as more footage emerges from the raid on that Capitol, so do disturbing details. Some of them are wanted to shoot and run over Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, and hang Vice President Pence for not overturning the election result. All is calm now on the Mall, the imperial and ceremonial access at the heart of Washington, a city whose monuments are therapy in granite and marble about America's view of its unique self. Wednesday night, after the violence on Capitol Hill, this country told itself this is not who we are. But that's not entirely accurate. America has always been haunted by political violence. And if anything, Wednesday should have served as a wake-up call that perhaps the United States of America is not quite as exceptional as it likes to think of itself. That at the heart of this almost imperial capital lies a contradiction between the values of liberty and the exercise of power. A new president will soon be sworn in, but the trauma created by the last one will have left its mark. Well, we all know that President Trump has been kicked off Twitter, but also the alternative social media website Parler, used by many right-wing extremists here, has also now been banned by a number of organizations. Let's talk to Emily Bell, Professor of Journalism at Columbia University. Emily, welcome to the program. How big a deal is this with Parler?
Hi, Matt. Thanks. Well, it is a big deal because what you're seeing is not just the banning of Donald Trump. We saw that last week on Facebook. We saw it on Twitter. But now this idea that Parler, which is a whole site, has been struck out of the Apple store. It can't list its app because it won't control the speech on the platform. And Amazon Web Services, which, yes, it's owned by Amazon, but a lot of viewers might not be familiar with the fact that it actually acts as the storage mechanism for a huge number of sites on the internet. Once it says it's not going to host something like Parler, then the options for those sites are very limited. Effectively, they have to go and build an entire infrastructure for themselves. And this is a very crossing the Rubicon, if you like, for tech companies getting involved in political speech.
This is interesting, isn't it? So, in a sense, what Donald Trump has done is created collateral damage for the social media giants who are now engaged in this whole debate about where does free speech end and political incitement start.
One could argue that in some ways it's the other way around, Matt, that actually the social media companies very much created the conditions which enabled a leader like Trump to come to power. He was masterful at using both mainstream media through the commentators on Fox News and his Twitter feed to really create a kind of political communications environment that we haven't seen before. And it is an abuse of power. I think that's the interesting thing, that throughout the last 4 years, we've seen social media companies post-justify allowing Donald Trump's use of these platforms to basically ramp up lies and conspiracy theories on the basis that it's free speech, it's political speech, everyone has a right to hear, whilst at the same time, of course, it has had a really deadening effect on dissent, on the free press, on people who've been intimidated and harassed. So one could say that, yes, it's going to be damaging to the social media companies, but I don't know that Trump himself created this. I think they very much opened the door to this problem themselves many years ago.
And do you think that Trump and Trumpism can survive if it doesn't get access to social media websites?
I think this is a very interesting question that we're facing now, not just in America, but if you look at charismatic elected authoritarians like Bolsonaro in Brazil, Duterte in the Philippines, even Narendra Modi in India, they all use social media in very different ways, some very directly, some very indirectly. And so it's not just a problem in the United States. And I think what everybody now understands is you're not going to, this problem isn't going to go away just by deplatforming a handful of accounts. It's going to really take quite a lot of time and much more regulation and much more reorganization of the market before we can say, well, actually, we have a democratic information commons again.
Okay, got to leave it there. Emily Bell, thank you very much indeed. And I should add that President Trump intends to spend the last 10 days in power pardoning friends, visiting the wall and staying relevant. Back to you, Kathy.